Greetings everyone, I am John Matthew Banyos.
I am Freya Marie de Ocampo.
And I am Keith Ashley Amaga, welcoming you to
Reminiscing the future.
Wherein we encourage people to give importance to our past while anticipating our ever so changing future.
Hello guys, it has been a while, has it not?
It has been 2 to 3 weeks, I think.
Surprisingly, it has only been 2 weeks.
Already? I thought it's only been a week. I must have forgotten to change my calendar again.
Again? I believe updating it after this session would be for the best. Who knows? Maybe it will cause more problems for you.
Yeah, you're right. I will do that later.
Well, at least there's progress. Anyways, do you guys know what our topic would be today?
Would we theorize about past events?
Good guess, but no. We will be delving into the depths of Philippine literature and some of their examples' relevance to us decades after publication.
Ooh, interesting.
Right? You know, lately I've been really curious regarding Philippine literature. I kind of fell down a rabbit hole after watching a YouTube short of the new adaptation of Noli Me Tangere in this certain television show.
I think I know the show you're pertaining to. It is quite famous these days after all.
Phenomenal, right? It was such a refreshing concept for us Filipinos. Ever since I watched it, I have been obsessed. I want to know more. For you guys, Matthew and Freya, how would you explain Philippine literature to me and the listeners?
For starters, literature is any written work usually for telling stories and creating various art forms by authors. Combined with our country, the Philippines, Philippine literature are written works relevant to our country's history, traditions, and current issues or trends.
That is right, Freya. Well done. How about you, Matthew?
Well, as a Filipino myself, I have read a lot of Philippine literature. Famous examples include the one you mentioned, Noli Me Tangere, its sequel El Filibusterismo, and numerous others. I think these novels best describe Philippine literature as a whole, because of their distinct characteristics that every Philippine literature possess or has, which are rich in Filipino culture and full of lessons.
Right! I still remember how I decided to be a responsible daughter after reading the famous legend Ang Alamat ng Pinya. As a kid, I imagined turning into a fruit due to my laziness, which was then replaced with my fueled passion for chores.
Not sure about that, but one thing I know for sure is how stories and literature surrounded and influenced us growing up.
Yeah, I think that is also an artistic expression of Filipino authors. And since, of course, these are also texts or books, we can gain knowledge from them as readers. This knowledge can be given to us directly or hinted at to us with symbolisms spread throughout an unexpected story.
Since we're talking about Philippine literature, I believe that we all know how it connects and dates back to our ancestors' experiences and way of living. We should be proud of our culture and heritage, and always be grateful for the innovative people that helped build our country's literature into what it is today.
Yeah, you're correct. Showing pride in our country. You also told us about different books from the past, right? Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. Those that were written by our national hero, Dr. Jose P. Rizal.
Speaking of Dr. Jose Rizal, does anyone here know his full name?
Dr. Jose Rizal.
Nope. It's Jose Protasio Rizal Mercado y Alonzo Rialonda. Now you know.
Well, that's longer than I remember.
Right? Fun fact, he changed his surname to Rizal instead of Mercado to hide his identity or blend in with the Spaniards. Because at that time, the surname Mercado was quite targeted by the Spaniards.
Oh, okay. So, moving on. His books were also written back during the colonization of the Hispanics in our country, right?
Yes, with his brilliant thinking, he enlightened our ancestors' minds. As we all know, the Philippines has been colonized by many countries, right? They've all contributed to the Filipino literature being altered or changed because of their forceful cultural influence.
Religion, for example. Catholicism was brought to the Philippines. Filipinos had been demanded by the Spanish colonizers to transition to Catholicism. Many other compulsory beliefs were enforced in the Philippines by colonizers that predetermined Filipinos to change their way of life.
There's also this pre-colonial text we've had before called Baybayin, I think.
Why bring that up?
Because as I was treasure hunting for things in my home, I saw a bookmark with familiar writings and just wondered if it was related to Philippine literature. I asked my mom, and she described it like it was an alphabet used by pre colonial Filipinos.
Yes, actually, she's correct.
Guys, don't you think we have been talking about the past materials from our literature so much that we kinda left out the present ones?
I do get where you're coming from. We should realize that the past we are talking about was once the present for the generation that time.
That is right. As Filipinos, we grew up surrounded by groundbreaking classics. They were so great that even after decades, we still use them.
Really?
Yes! We can use them not only as a mirror to the past and their beliefs, but also as our inspiration to face and overcome our country's current issues.
Oh, I see. If the older literature were that influential, even influencing the generation years that they were published, then it could be the same with our generation's literature.
As kids, we were influenced by everything that surrounded us, teaching what things are and how they process. This would also be the same for children today, witnessing the growth of literature created by our aspiring artists and authors. Seeing them grow from scratch would influence them.
And with these literatures, our country's people will pick up a lot of things, from our way of speaking up to the ideas, beliefs, and principles we follow as individuals.
That's why we should embrace and anticipate our future. With issues being brought up in articles and books written, people are opening their hearts and minds to concepts and ideas that were once considered blasphemy.
Right? If we think about it, this concept of creating a story hinting at issues country faces has already been done by past authors, though they were usually done through symbolism due to regulation and checking done by the country that held ours at their thumb. Our fellow Filipinos found ways to assure and inform others with the use of writing.
I believe one of the most famous examples of literature being used as a way of exposing something would be the famous novel Noli Me Tangere.
Haven't we already mentioned that novel several times just a few minutes ago?
Well, yes, but it deserves the fame and glory it gets. Not only was it beautifully written, but it was also written with the goal to inform our fellow Filipinos of the wrongdoings others have received from the handling of Spaniards in our country. There was even a character there that symbolizes our country itself.
Yes, that character is named Sisa, I believe. She was beautiful yet pitiful, always beaten and abused by her husband Pedro, who represented Spaniards in our houses.
Oh, you meant this was the way for Filipinos to realize how maltreated we were by the Spaniards and why we should not just let them be. I see Noli Me Tangere really did play a role in our history and present.
Not only Noli Me Tangere, but there are also other literatures such as Florante at Laura, Ibong Adarna, and more.
Florante and Laura? Was that not a love story used to express the author's feelings for the one he loved?
Well, actually, it was only disguised as a love story to pass the tight regulation of publication by the Spaniards.
Well, Keith, if it was not entirely written as a love story, then what is the purpose or message of the novel, Florante at Laura?
Though it was focused on the trials a couple faced, it had underlying messages the author had intended for our fellow Filipinos, similar to the Noli Me Tangere novel. The novel was associated with the author wanting to wake up their fellow Filipino people and recognizing the unfairness ruled by the Spaniards.
How do you know all this stuffs?
I just really like our country's literature. Every time I read one, it's like I'm being taken back to the time that certain literature was published, even though it happened years ago. I would visualize characters in their traditional outfits, using our language with their distinct accent. It has many unique stories written in ways where our minds are challenged to unlock a world that's just a read away.
Since we have discussed the influence and importance of the past Philippine literature to us, I think it is time to imagine what would happen in the future. Would we maintain the value of our literature? Would the following generation handle them with care as much as we have?
Seeing how most of the historical texts are kept in sealed boxes within museums, it is safe to say that our literature would stay for more years, mostly intact. It is important for us to show their importance, letting them see how a compilation of pages can translate to years of our history.
Well, of course, our future will always be changing. However, the things we create will always stay in our history. Just as it is for us and the past literature, I'm sure it will be the same for future generations. They would read these novels, learn from them, teach them to the younger generations, till generations to come. These literatures played big parts in our history. Without them, there could have never been a revolution against Spaniards. We could have grown up oblivious to the things that happened to our country, the beauty it once had, and the suffering of our people because of it.
Wow, that was a lot. But I get what you both mean, and I hope our listeners do as well.
I'm sure they get it. Right, guys?
I sure hope so. Just as what they said, I also believe that literature created in our era may reflect on the issues or trends we are currently facing. We have also created recreations of the past literature to add our modernized twist, to make it easier for people to relate to. And this could be the same with the next generation. They would have books telling them the problems and issues our country has faced, and what steps our government did, or what actions the citizens took to overcome them.
That's right. Through our literature, we get to have connections to generations that are years to the past and future. We get to have a glimpse of how they saw the world during their time and compare it to the one we are currently living in.
I think we have covered all there is to discuss today, no?
Yeah, I agree. It has been quite the journey. We have engaged in a conversation involving Philippine literature, its examples, its relevance to the past, and its relevance to the future. And I think we have come up with a conclusion. But before that, let us give our takeaways in this podcast.
Well, my main takeaway from this is how the novels and other literature were used as a way of informing fellow Filipinos and opening their minds without that much of an alarm to the colonizers.
I agree. I also learned that with the help of literature, not only do we get to visualize what our country looked like in the past, we also got to learn the traditions and beliefs we would have forgotten if not for the written works about them.
My takeaway, other than the things mentioned, would be how important it is for a country to treasure their literature, no matter how old or years back it was. Literature will always be a mirror of the past, no matter the writing style, be it folklore where we get to see their beliefs, up to real life stories where we get to see what our country was for the Filipinos at their time.
And I think all of our takeaways already covered our conclusion. Therefore, I will make this short. As Filipinos, it is important for us to value our literature and teach it to the generations to come. This will make sure that the values and sacrifices our fellow Filipinos suffered and put up will not go to waste. We should lead as an example and spark others' interest in also appreciating the literature our country has, which not only represents the past Filipinos, but us as a whole.
Thank you, Keith, for that wonderful wrap up. Once again, I am Freya Marie de Ocampo.
I am John Matthew Banyas.
And I am Keith Ashley Amaga. This was
Reminiscing the future.
This program of the Sophian Radio is exclusively published by the Paladin Society. The views and opinions of the podcast creators don't necessarily reflect the official policies and position, views and opinions of Escuela de Sofia of Caloocan Inc., its administrators, personnel, and staff, host of program and other people of the network. Any content provided by the people on the podcast are their own opinion and not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual in anyone or anything. Fair use statement: this podcast may contain copyrighted materials, the use of which has not been specifically authorized by the copyright holders. All rights reserved 2022.